What's going on, everyone? Happy Monday. Another week in this world. How are you doing, Korea?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's kind of crazy. We're already near the Final Four for both NCAA men's and women's tournaments already. So March came and went, and we're already almost in April. But April, you know what that means. NBA playoffs are about to start. MLB season finally gonna start. So I'm excited for that. How you doing?
Yeah, you're right. March has definitely really flown by. It seems like every year that the NCAA tournament, it's slow to get here. Like in March, like the first half of the month, waiting for the first round to start, and then the second half just flows by quickly as the tournament goes by. Into April, and so yeah, now we're getting ready for the Final Four on Saturday. And first, we'll recap the Elite Eight from this past weekend. We'll go in order. So we'll start with the ugly shooting performance from Houston and Villanova. Villanova beat Houston 50-44. On I think this first game on Saturday. Um, credit to the defenses, but this is also just a lot of just missed shots for both teams. After Houston goes 9 for 20 from three against Arizona, they go 1 for 20 against Villanova. It was like the Rockets Warriors like all over again when the Rockets missed 27 straight threes in that game. It was like the same thing. Kyler Edwards 1 for 12, over 8 from deep. Taze Moore 6 for 21 overall. Jamal Shad 4 for 13. Those three combined to shoot 1 for 18 from three. And then Villanova Gillespie only had one field goal, 6 points. But Jalen Samuels stepped up with this double-double, 16 points, Jermaine Samuels, double-double, 16 points, 10 rebounds. Thoughts out to Justin Moore, absolutely brutal with like a minute left in the game, tearing his Achilles. Absolutely brutal. Like they showed the slow-mo of his, and that was definitely, you could tell right away. Yeah, well, I guess what were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah. First off, the Justin Moore injury. I was watching that live, and I saw it happen, and I saw him just collapse to the floor, and I was like, oh no, like it was like something similar because as a Warriors fan, like obviously back in 2019, the whole KD 20 killer, it was like it looked exactly like that. I'm like, yeah, I knew it as soon as I saw that injury, I was like, yeah, it's torn Achilles, he's done. So thoughts out to him. Hopefully, gets a speedy recovery, but I mean, you mentioned it. It's just March. I mean, Houston, they had a great shooting day, well, better shooting day against Arizona, and then they play Villanova, and they can't hit a three to save their life. So that's just the magic of March. I mean, just very low scoring. I mean, just ugly shooting. Just it's one of those low scoring, quick games that'll end like 50-44, which was actually the final score of this contest. So, in terms of Villanova, obviously, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do now that they lost Justin Moore, another injury for this Villanova team, going up against a hot Kansas team. We'll get into that later, but it's not looking great for Villanova right now, considering how injured they already are, and now they have to play a team that can shoot really well, and it looks like they have to depend on Colin Gillespie to do it all again.
Yeah. But even though Houston, it wasn't the performance that they wanted, it was still a great run. They lost one or two key players in the middle of the season, and so many thought that they might be done for that. But they still fought and battled their way into the Elite Eight after making the Final Four last year. So still a great run overall for them. Uh,
Yeah,
let's let's let's
definitely
jump
shout out
into
Definitely shout out to Houston real quick. I mean, like you mentioned, they lost their two leading scorers on their team. They're pretty much the two best players offensively mid-season, and then all of a sudden, everyone was questioning whether or not this team was legit. After this team beat Bama, and then all of a sudden, like they end up in the Elite Eight, only losing by 6. So people got to put respect on Houston. And now that they're going to be moving to the Big 12 pretty soon, I think that's next year. That's going to be really interesting to see how Houston does in a Power Five conference like the Big 12, where it's very competitive every single year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's stay on that side of the bracket. You mentioned the Kansas game, so we'll get right into that. Talk about the tale of two halves with Miami leading by 6 at halftime, and then getting outscored by 32 in the second half to end up getting blown out by 26, 76 to 50. I mean, the Miami was really reliant on their backcourt and Cameron McGusty and Isaiah Wong, and those two guys showed up at 33, and the rest of the team just didn't show up. Like the shooting performance in the Houston Villanova game, they shot 3 for 21 from three, and so you're not going to beat a Kansas team, shooting like that. And then, yeah, Kansas kind of balanced Agbaji, 8 for 12, 18 points. Brown, 12 points. McCormick, 15. They're definitely more balanced. And they only shot 14 threes, and they shot 50% overall from the field. So significantly more efficient. And, Miami's run ends in the Elite Eight. Another great run by them that not many to no one expected out of them. But, yeah, what's your takeaway from this game?
Yeah, first off, like you mentioned it, the tale of two halves, like Kansas, it just seemed like their offense just was not clicking the first half. It looks like, Miami was just getting the best of them offensively and defensively. And then all of a sudden, Remy Martin and Abaji and just that Kansas offense that we well know pretty much just ran throughout the second half, going on plenty of like 10-0 runs, 12-2 runs, just expanding their lead against Miami the whole game. But you mentioned Miami, great story for them. Obviously, they were at 10 seed. We even picked. I know you picked USC. I picked USC to beat Miami in the first round, but they won this incredible one, defeating USC, then Auburn, and then obviously Iowa State to get to the Elite Eight. So, and Miami obviously they were picked to finish last in the ACC. I mean, no one really talks about it, but 3 ACC teams in the Elite Eight. I mean, for a quote-unquote down year for the ACC, they got 3 teams in the Elite Eight, so that's positive, and one of those Miami. But in terms of Kansas, I just talked about it. As soon as they get on that hot run with Remy Martin and those guys, it's game over. Remy Martin is a game changer. We've seen this in the Pac-12, obviously, when he was at ASU. He was a game changer for the Sun Devils. He pretty much made that offense, electric. And then on the defensive side, he is just so right in your face electric that it brings the energy defensively. So as soon as Remy Martin gets put in the game with under Bill Self, it's a game changer. So that's why Kansas is just running through this tournament right now with big wins right now, especially over a good Miami team who pretty much handled them throughout the first half. So Kansas, they move on to the Final Four now, and it's going to be interesting. I already mentioned it. We have that Villanova-Kansas matchup. We'll talk about that later, but it's going to be interesting to see the health of Villanova matching up with just how deep that Kansas roster goes with Brown and Abaji and Martin and just all those guys who can just shoot the lights out. And if you get too behind, well, it's too late now.
Yeah, I mean, Remy only had 9 points in this game, but we saw, I think he had like 15 or something in the Creighton game in the Sweet 16. And obviously his veteran presence off the bench is huge. And just really shows you how deep this team is. Part of it was because of the game being over with a few minutes left, but they can go 7-8, seriously deep. So definitely something to watch out for against the Villanova team that, is dealing with injuries. But yeah, we'll get into that. So now we'll get into the second Elite Eight game on Saturday. And funny enough, Duke. So Duke wins 78-69 over Arkansas. Duke scores 45 points in the first half, which is more than Houston scored in the whole game in that game before, which is pretty ironic. But, led by Banchero, who had 16, A.J. Griffin, 7 of 9, 18 points. They had 4 guys who had at least 12, so that balance is really important this time of year. Note was he fouled out. He only had 14 points, which Arkansas needs more from him if they're going to be a team like Duke. But Jalen Williams stepped up, 19 points, 10 rebounds. They had 3 guys who had at least 14, so they were there too, and that's why the game was close most of the way. Duke was up by 12 at half, and Arkansas kind of stayed steady in the second half and made a few runs to keep it pretty close. And then Duke just took the game away, late in the last few minutes. But what were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. I mean, you mentioned it, just kind of the competition. Shout out Eric Musselman, obviously head coach of Arkansas. Obviously another great year, another Elite Eight year for Muss in Arkansas. Obviously last year losing to I believe it was Baylor in that Elite Eight matchup this year, now losing to Duke. So two top quality. I mean Baylor, they won the title last year, so maybe it means that Duke's winning the title this year. But I mean, Duke obviously. Coach K has that tournament experience to know what to do in these kind of situations. Obviously, you mentioned close game all game, but that guy from Seattle, 206 stand up, Mr. Mancaro, he just stood up and he does what he does with the bright lights. We already talked about it in our last episode. We talked about his ability to just shine with the bright lights, and that's what he did again. So I mean, it wasn't a horrible day for the Razorbacks. Obviously, Note fouling out was pretty much kind of the what is it the bullet to like the back of the
nail
head
in
or
the
something.
coffin.
Yeah, like a nail in the coffin, pretty much. So, yeah, that was just like, well, our leading scorer is out now. But Jalen Williams, obviously, you mentioned him. He stepped up pretty well as well. So it just looks like Arkansas was battling with them pretty well against the blue blood, but the Coach K experience is just that well-rounded, balanced team just proved to be too much for this Arkansas team. Now the storybook ending, Coach K's final tournament run. Duke's now in the Final Four once again. After a lot of people said they were, not flukes, but after that tournament loss to who was it in the ACC tournament? I believe it was someone in the ACC.
Was it Virginia Tech or was that someone?
I think it was VTech. I think it was Virginia Tech. Yeah, after that, I think it was after that loss. A lot of people were skeptical, but Coach K does it again. He brings that Duke Blue Devil team to the Final Four, and what a storyline. We'll get to who they're facing, obviously, but what a crazy storyline.
I'm just confirming real quick. Or was it UNC? No, yeah, it was Virginia Tech. Yeah, and UNC was late in the regular season. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll get to the final Elite Eight, which is the end, the end of the Cinderella, the end of the Peacocks. They finally, the first time all tournament that they truly looked like a number 15 seed. It was ugly early. At least I mean, I don't know. I guess that brings into question whether you'd rather lose in a close game late or if you'd rather just know it's over at halftime and just. But this game was over at halftime. They're down by like 19-20 at halftime. I think UNC got up to like a 10-0 run, and at that point you could just see their physicality down low and just their presence of their guard play was just that was going to be too much for St. Peter's. They went by 20, 69-49. Baycott had 20 points, 22 rebounds. He was just a man amongst boys in this game. Manic had some huge in the first half. He had like an 8-0 run by himself. He had 19 in the game. I mean, UNT didn't shoot that well from deep, but I mean, they didn't need to play extremely well offensively to win this game against the St. Peter's team that scored 49 points. You don't really need to play great offensively to beat a team that scores that many points. Yeah, I mean, they just finally, like I said, they finally looked like a number 15 seed, unlike the last 3 games. Peacock's run comes to an end by the Tar Heels.
It hurt, man. It hurt. I'm not gonna lie. St. Peter's, obviously, amazing story there. I mean, obviously, I've seen all the TikToks. I've seen all like the stories about how St. Peter's, they had to do their post game pressers in like a yoga studio, and how they couldn't play loud music while they're working out because it would disturb the classroom next door. And this amazing story out of this small mid-major conference school from Jersey City, New Jersey. Everyone ruled them out first round except for like 0.1% of people with brackets. So pretty much 99.99% of people ruled out St. Peter's already, and they made that incredible run. So just shout out to St. Peter's, incredible run. It's pretty much the best Cinderella run, undoubtedly the best Cinderella run that we've ever seen. But in terms of just amazing storylines, this one's for the history book. So shout out St. Peter's. Got to give them all their flowers. But here we are, Duke UNC. It kind of feels weird that it's the first time these two teams have met in the tournament, like in March Madness. Obviously, they've met plenty of times, like within the ACC tournament or whatever, or and obviously they meet twice in the regular season. But it's kind of weird. Like you never really thought that these two teams would meet in the like actual NCAA tournament with all the number one seeds that they've had and top line seeds. But here we are, number 2 Duke and number 8 UNC. Obviously, UNC's path to get here. They beat down Marquette in the first round easily with head coach Shaka Smart for the Golden Eagles of Marquette. Then they upset Baylor in the second round off of a good shooting day. Then they upset UCLA in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite Eight. And then obviously ending the St. Peter's Cinderella story in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. For Duke, they beat, I think, Cal State Fullerton in the first round. They handled Tom Izzo in the second round with Michigan State. Sweet 16, they avoided the upset against Texas Tech, and then in the Elite Eight, they defeated Arkansas to get to the Final Four. So Ari, here we are. These two schools literally are not even 15 minutes apart, and yet they're meeting in the Final Four. Obviously, it's not Roy Williams versus Coach K. This is first-year head coach Hubert Davis. What a great year for him, leading this program to their first Final Four since I believe they won the title back in 2017, and doing it in his first year as an 8th seed, where everyone was questioning this UNC team on their legitimacy, on the fact that they have no quad one wins. Then they beat Duke, and then obviously they shut up all the haters on this crazy run to make it to the Final Four. And for Duke, obviously this was all about Coach K's final season. He announced this before the season even started. We all knew that Coach K was going to retire as soon as March Madness or whenever his season was ending. And he just ran through the tournament. He ran through the ACC, finished first, got the number 2 seed line in the tournament. Obviously, Coach K was tested, but his team prevailed, obviously led by Seattle product, number 5 for Duke, Paolo Banchero. So what do you think of this matchup? Obviously, this is a big rivalry game. I believe these two teams split in the regular. I believe these two split in the regular season. So this is crazy. But this is round 3, and what kind of a bigger stage could it be at in the Final Four?
Yeah, Duke crushed them on the road in February, and that's kind of when UNC is kind of not in a, if I remember correctly, not in a great, because they got off to kind of like a slower start. And so that was that. And then in March, like the last game of the regular season, or the second to last, one of the last games of the regular season, UNC handles Duke pretty easily at Duke. Obviously, like you said, the schools are like 10, 15 minutes apart, so there's no real like true home court advantage because the fans traveled to both, no matter where the game's at. But yeah, here we are. Yeah, round 3. The pressure's been on Duke and their players all tournament, knowing that any game could be Coach K's last game. And then UNC had, I would say, a slightly easier path to this point. But obviously, both teams are deserving, and both teams have won the games they needed to win to get here. Duke's a 4-point favorite, and I'm riding with Duke to get to the championship. I think a lot of people will be on UNC, especially given how they handled Duke to end the regular season. But yeah, I don't know. I think Coach K is going to make the right adjustments that he needs to turn. And obviously, they have the experience with this team, the mix of composure of Banchero and just pure talent of Banchero and just the experience overall. Yeah, like I said, they know that any game could be Coach K's last game, so they've had that added pressure on them every game of this tournament, and they've handled it, as well as they could have from my perspective of watching them play. So I'm going Duke. Who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how the last time these two teams played, obviously, was Coach K's final game at Cameron Indoor, and UNC just whipped them at their home court. And it was kind of embarrassing for Duke. And obviously, you saw all the memes about all Duke fans crying and all that stuff. Obviously, a big rivalry game there. But that was a different Duke team back then. Obviously, that Duke team was under a lot of suspicion. Obviously, now they lost that game. We already talked about how Duke lost to UNC in the final game of the regular season for Duke. And then they obviously lost to Virginia Tech in the believe the semifinals of the ACC tournament after barely scraping past Syracuse in their first game. So, but that Duke team was different. And I think as soon as they entered the tournament, they got their mind straight and they just started, playing Duke basketball the way they know how to. But I want to shout out Hubert Davis. He's led this team, who was very looked on skeptical, obviously with not many quad one wins, not really. So they had some bad losses to teams like Pitt, who are like quad three and just not really good looks for the resume. And then they turned that all around after beating Duke, and then finishing second in the ACC, and then being an 8 seed, one of 3 teams in the ACC. And you can say that obviously, so one had a kind of easier road, but at the same time, it's like it's either one and done. And I mean, North Carolina, they've shown up in this tournament as well. Like Duke definitely has, in terms of just gritty wins, but the shooting ability of like Manic and Baycott, they've showed up in this tournament. So this is obviously going to be a great game. This is the trilogy round 3 between these two schools who literally have no separation in Carolina. So all the fans are going to be definitely packed in New Orleans for this game this weekend. Duke's the favorite, and they're the favorite for a reason. I have Duke winning this game, but it's going to be very, very close. I believe it's going to be one of the few buzzer beaters we've seen all March Madness, because surprisingly, we haven't seen a single buzzer beater, which is kind of sad to me this year. So that's why I'm hoping we get one in this Final Four to the championship. And I believe it's going to be between Duke and UNC, but Duke's going to prevail, and I think they're going to make it to the championship.
Yeah, it should definitely be a great game, fun atmosphere in New Orleans, fun everything. So definitely looking forward to that. And now we'll go to the other Final Four game that we alluded to before between Villanova and Kansas. Again, Villanova will be without Justin Moore, their second leading scorer, so that'll be a huge loss. Kansas is a 4.5-point favorite. And yeah, I think the loss of Moore is just going to be too much for Villanova. That's already, obviously they have the experience. Jay Wright's a great coach. I think they'll definitely be prepared. They'll have a whole week to prepare without Moore. So I think, the first half they'll keep it pretty close. But I think the second half, Kansas' offensive firepower will be too much for Villanova. And so I think we'll see a Kansas-Duke championship.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Villanova's road to get here. They beat Delaware in the first round, and then they beat the Big Ten schools, beating Ohio State in the round of 32, and then beating Michigan in the Sweet 16 before that scrappy game against Houston in the Elite Eight, now reaching the Final Four. And if they have a game like that against a hot Kansas team, it's not going to be looking good for them. And you already mentioned the loss of Justin Moore with his torn Achilles. That's just another obstacle that Villanova has to overcome to get to to get to the championship. Obviously, head coach Jay Wright, he's been in this situation before. He's been in so many Final Fours. Who can count on probably on one finger. He's already won 2 championships, so he knows what to do. But he's going to be a little undermatched when he goes up against a very deep Kansas team. And obviously, this Kansas team, their path to get here, they beat Texas Southern in the first round, and then beating Creighton and Providence back-to-back Big East schools in the round of 32 and then the Sweet 16 before beating Miami in the Elite Eight before getting here to the Final Four. We just seen the emergence of Remy Martin. Just his presence on the court. It's just a disturbance for other teams. And obviously Agbaji, he just keeps shooting the lights out. We've seen him constantly just be an offensive threat for opponents in this tournament. So you say Kansas is a 4.5-point favorite. I think they're a favorite for a reason. I believe Kansas is probably going to win this game, just on the sole threat that, Agbaji, he just changes the game. And I don't think, yes, Villanova is very, very good at the line. I think I believe they're the best free throw shooting team in the country. Despite all that, they're gonna need Kansas to basically not make a shot in order for them to actually survive, which is the only thread hanging on for Villanova. So if Kansas just shows up and does what they've been doing in the tournament, I believe Kansas is going to run away with this one as of late. And we have a Duke versus Kansas national championship game in New Orleans.
Yeah, should be good games. Again, those are on Saturday. Was it April 2nd? I believe it's
Yeah, that's
Saturday.
Saturday, April 2nd.
Um, so that was all we had for that. I want to touch on, if you wanted to touch on, I know your team, Washington State, is in the semifinals tomorrow of the NIT in Madison Garden. I don't. I guess we just touch on those quickly. St. Bonaventure against Xavier is one Final Four, and then Washington State, Texas A&M is the other Final Four. What's your thoughts on those two games, and what's your confidence level in the Cougars beating Texas A&M, and if it happens in the championship?
Yeah, of course. First off, shout out to my Cougs. You know, we in the Garden. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We in New York. Yes, sir. We in the Bronx. I'm just kidding. But yeah. This team has had an amazing run. Obviously, we knew we were destined to be an NIT team after our struggles throughout the month of February against those top teams. But you know, we had some questions. Obviously, we had a very offensive game, and obviously, our offense is clicking right now, which is why we're pretty much just running through this tournament. Obviously, us beating Santa Clara at home, just offensively. Michael Flowers shooting the ball really well, and then in the game against SMU on the road, very just offensive game in the second half, beating number one, one of the last four teams out, SMU by the way. So that's a very big statement right there, win for us, and then just shooting against BYU, it's the same thing. We're just shooting well, so. Now you play Texas A&M. This is going to be a scary one for us because obviously Texas A&M, they're getting hot at the right time. We're getting hot at the right time. So I believe it's going to be a fun one. Texas A&M, I think they're like a 1-point favorite right now. Obviously, you know who I'm rolling with, but I believe it's going to be a very back and forth game tomorrow night. In terms of St. Bonaventure and Xavier, it's the same thing. St. Bona, they're getting hot at the right time too. I mean, I believe they have beaten so many teams that have pretty much. I believe there was a stat on Twitter because of all the teams they beat Colorado. I forgot who else they beat to advance in the NIT tournament, but all the teams they've beaten, the more money has been funded into those programs at those schools than the ones for St. Bonaventure. So shout out to St. Bona. They've had an incredible run in this NIT tournament. They were one of the teams that were kind of looking toward that bubble, but then obviously a loss in the tournament kind of in the A10 tournament just burst that bubble for them. Then Xavier, obviously, they were a team that a lot of people pretty much had in the tournament, the NCAA tournament, and then the loss to Butler in the first round of the Big East tournament kind of just said, yeah, you're not in the tournament. So I hope to see St. Bonaventure win, but, I think Xavier may pull it out. And then, obviously, I don't want A&M to win, obviously, but I'm gonna say my Wazoo friends better not flame me for this. I'm gonna say A&M, but I'm rolling with my Cougs 100%. I'm excited for that game tomorrow because I got my boys calling on there. They're actually in New York City right now, so shout out to Aaron and Colby. If you guys are watching this, I hope you guys have fun tomorrow calling the game. But yeah, Cougs are in the Garden. I'm excited for this game tomorrow, and I'm excited to see how we do against the top SEC school.
Yeah, definitely should be a fun one. Obviously, it gets overshadowed by the NCAA tournament, but I mean, the NIT teams are the teams that just missed out on the tournament, so they're good in their own right. So, and that's on a day where there's no NCAA tournament games, there's nothing else to watch in terms of college basketball. So you might as well tune in. I think that was all I had. Was there anything else you want to talk about?
No, you guys will catch us on Wednesday. We'll have a little bit of results from the NIT semifinals as we get ready for the championship game, which I believe is the day after on Wednesday. Yeah, it is on Wednesday.
It's on. No, I think it's Tuesday, Thursday.
Oh, I think it is Thursday. Oh, so yeah, so
Yeah.
that must mean it is the third. Okay, so yeah, so we have we'll get ready for those games on the 31st, which is on Thursday. And then we'll obviously keep you updated with anything going on in the MLB as we get closer to opening day. We'll give you a little preview of our playoff picture for the NBA as the end of the season. We're only about 7 games away from most teams, and we'll talk about the debacle of the Lakers now with LeBron being injured and them, now
they're only one up on the Spurs now for that play-in, and their schedule the rest of the season is super tough. So
Yeah,
something to keep
we'll
an eye on.
exactly. We'll tell you all about that on Wednesday. But for now, this is going to be another episode of AKP Sport Talks. We will see you guys on Wednesday.